Tonight, the memo is on the extravagance that has been witnessed being a mockery of President William Ruto's austerity pledge. The president has, since his election in 2022, reiterated his commitment to austerity measures to tackle national economic challenges. Efforts have been made to reduce the public debt, curb government wastage, and stabilize the economy. However, critics see a huge gap between the promise and the reality. Initially, the Treasury implemented 75% cuts on budgets for foreign travel, training, advertising, and hospitality for the 2022-2023 financial year. It is therefore disappointing that with nearly a year and a half to end of his first five-year tenure, the wanton wastefulness by the government has increased. State House has significantly overshot its recurrent budget for the 2025-2026 financial year, spending at least 10.4 billion shillings within the first 6 to 7 months against an original allocation of 8.58 billion shillings. However, the State House budget has doubled from 8 billion to 17 billion in the supplementary budget passed last week. Deputy President Kithure Kindiki's office got an additional 450 million shillings for hospitality and helicopter hire expenses. Now, Professor Kindiki's office spent 154 million shillings on hiring helicopters for his trips across the country within 75 days. Parliamentary documents also show that 117.3 million shillings was spent on catering services, 80.24 million on tent hire and decor services, and 40.4 million shillings on food. This also comes at a time when the Kenya Revenue Authority continues to miss revenue targets by a wide margin amid rising public debt. The Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee has questioned the expenditure, including at least 8 million shillings on helicopter hire in a single day on 2 separate occasions. However, the timing of the trips coincides with preparations for the November 27th, 2025 by-elections in at least 24 electoral areas, including several parliamentary seats in which President Ruto's UDA party was keen to secure victory. This extravagance flies in the face of the president's own commitment to curbing the runaway public spending.
16.998 billion shillings. That is how much State House, one building, one office, has been allocated in this financial year after the National Treasury doubled its budget mid-year using Article 223 of the Constitution, which is the emergency spending clause. For context, Kenya's State House now spends more than the White House, more than Nigeria, with 220 million people, more than South Africa, Tanzania, and Germany. But the State House figure is only part of it, because the presidency is not just State House. It's also the executive office of the president, the office of the deputy president, the office of the prime cabinet secretary. Add it all together, 32.2 billion shillings. Billion with a B, to run the office of one man and the people around him. 88 million shillings a day, including weekends, including public holidays, including the days your child's school has no chalk, including the days the hospital has no blood, including the days the Mama Mboga paid a housing levy for a house she will never, ever live in. Now, here's the question this episode is going to answer, and we're going to answer it with receipts, not just vibes, receipts. Some of that spending is constitutionally required. I agree. Some of it is even legally permitted but discretionary. And some of it has no clear legal basis at all. We are going to separate all three tonight. So, what does the law actually say? Before we get to the numbers, I need to give you the framework, because most Kenyan political commentary treats presidential spending as a moral question. He's greedy, he's wasteful, he does not even care, and maybe, but morality is not what we are measuring today. We are measuring legality and accountability. Those are 10 times harder to dodge. There are 3 categories of presidential spending. Each one is governed differently. Each one carries a different question. Category 1, constitutionally mandated. No, the president's salary, basic state house operation, security, these are not optional. Article 132 of the Constitution defines the president's core function. The State Officers Remuneration and Benefits Act sets what the president must receive. And security is a constitutional necessity. We are not even going to argue about this category. Category number 2, legally permitted but discretionary. The domestic and foreign travel, official delegations, hospitality, state lodge operations. The law allows this. The State Officers Act permits the president to travel. It does not cap how much he spends. There is no statutory ceiling on the delegation size. There is no mandatory public register of trip cost. Each one of those, either domestic or foreign, there's no cap or ceiling for any of them. Now, how much is spent is entirely at the president's discretion. And this is where the accountability question begins. And then there's category 3, the gray zone. The expenditures with no clear statutory basis, spending that cannot be traced to a specific legal authority. Mid-year budget expansions under Article 223, the emergency clause, used not for floods or pandemic, but for what National Treasury called enhanced operations and maintenance. The Parliamentary Budget Office has flagged this as an abuse of the Constitution. Their words, sadly, not mine. The question we are answering is not whether the president is allowed to spend money. No. The question is on what, how much, and who actually authorizes it. Whether you're paying taxes inside Kenya or remitting money home from London or Toronto or even Doha, this is your money being spent. The accountability question belongs to you and to me and to every one of us. Now, before we get to the numbers, I want to play you something, because a lot of this episode is about law, statutes, budget lines, procurement records. But before we measure what the president is spending, we need to measure it against what he actually said he would spend it on.
The following actions shall be taken with immediate effect towards the realization of the new budget. 47 state corporations with overlapping and duplicating functions will be dissolved, resulting in the elimination of their operational and maintenance costs, and their functions will be integrated into the respective line ministries. Staff currently employed by the affected corporations will be transferred to ministries and other state agencies within government. The decision to fill the position of chief administrative secretaries is hereby suspended. The number of advisors in government shall be reduced by 50% within the public service with immediate effect. Budget lines providing for the operations of the office of the First Lady, the spouse of the Deputy President, and the Prime Cabinet Secretary will be removed. Similarly, the budget provisions for confidential budgets in various executive offices, including my own office, have been removed, and the budget for renovations across government reduced by 50%. Henceforth, public servants who attain the retirement age of 60 shall be required to immediately proceed on retirement with no extensions to their tenure of service whatsoever. The purchase of new motor vehicles by the government is suspended for 12 months, except for security agencies, while a new policy on transport for public officers will be developed. All non-essential travel by state and public officers is hereby suspended. No state officer or public servant shall participate in public contributions or haram phase going forward.
Two quotes, both verified, both from him. The first, from the campaign trail in 2022, documented by the AFP and France 24. We want everyone to feel the wealth of this country, not just a few at the top. The second, from his own first State of the Nation address in 2022. The time has come. Let me start again. The time has come to retire the false comforts and illusionary benefits of wasteful expenditure. Those are not opposition quotes. Those are his own words from his campaign and from his own first address to the nation. In that first address, he also directed the Treasury to cut 300 billion shillings from government spending, including 75% cuts on travel, hospitality, vehicle rentals, and advertising. He issued a circular in October 2023 capping foreign delegations, cabinet secretaries, maximum 3 people including the CS, principal secretaries, maximum 2 foreign travel capped at 45 days per year per official. Travel spending in the national government went up soon, not down, by almost 7 billion shillings in the year that the circular was issued. In his first day in office, President Ruto made 26 foreign trips. 26. Between September 2022 and November 2023, he and the deputy president made 51 trips to 34 countries, averaging 4 trips per month. The presidency foreign travel bill in 2022-2023 alone was Kenya shillings 361 million, the highest ever recorded for a Kenyan president in a single year. In July 2024, after the Gen Z protests, he pledged austerity again, starting, he said, with cuts to the presidency budget. By January 2026, State House had spent 10.4 billion shillings against a full year recurrent allocation of 7.7 billion shillings, with 5 months still remaining in the financial year. That is not a hustler nation. That is a nation where the hustler is at the bottom and the nation's spending is peaked at the top. Before we get to the budget receipts, I want to go back to the document. Not a campaign speech, not a rally promise, the plan. The Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda 2022 to 2027. 65 pages, signed by William Ruto as deputy president. This is what he committed to in writing before he took the oath of office. I'm going to read you 5 things from this document, and then I'm going to tell you what actually happened. The first commitment, it's found on page 10 and 11. The manifesto set a specific binding financing framework, not a vision, a rule. It said, plan must be financed within a budget deficit target of 3% by financial year 2026-2027. Revenue projections will not exceed the average revenue growth in preceding 3 years, and expenditure growth capped at 75% of the revenue growth rate. It also required what is called budget neutrality, that for any new spending to be approved, the money had to come from an existing program being cut or closed. The plan said deficit of 3% by year 2026-2027. The reality, 4.8%. The manifesto's budget neutrality rule was never ever applied. State House used the emergency spending clause, Article 223, designed for floods and pandemics, to add a whopping 8.9 billion mid-year with no corresponding cut anywhere. And State House 16.998 billion budget is 93.7% recurrent. The manifesto explicitly stated the government would not borrow to finance recurrent expenditure. The presidency is spending 93 cents of every shilling on itself. Second commitment, page 7. And I want to encourage you. If before, as we edge so closer to the campaign season, and which I believe already has begun, and as we edge closer to 2027, I want you to revisit the manifesto, the agreement that he outlined with us Kenyans, that this was supposed to be the guidelines that he's going to use to improve the lives of the hustler nation. So back to page 7. The document's forward framed itself as different from normal political promises. It said, the economic turbulence that we are in demands more than a manifesto that makes catalogue of pledges that, if implemented, could push the country beyond the tipping point. It requires a credible economic turnaround plan. And then it said the plan would stand or fall on the how question. The plan said it would stand or fall on implementation. The controller of budget said the presidency's budget has become non-credible. Those are not opposition words. That is his own government's watchdog. The Parliamentary Budget Office called the media article 2022-23 expansion an abuse of the Constitution, directly contradicting the manifesto's promise to strengthen constitutional governance. The third commitment, found between page 58 and 61. The governance section of the manifesto was titled Ending State Capture. The power of hindsight, when you think about it, it sounds diabolical that they actually titled the governance section of their manifesto Ending State Capture. It pledged to establish within 30 days a quasi-judicial public inquiry into cronyism and state capture. It pledged to grant financial independence to the EACC and the police, specifically to prevent their reliance on the president's office. It pledged to publish an annual state of openness report for all state organs, and it committed to, and I'm quoting directly, promoting accountability and openness in the management of public affairs, institutionalizing open governance throughout all state organs and agencies. Sadly, no public inquiry into state capture was ever established within 30 days. None has been established since. No state of openness report exists for any year of the Ruto administration. Presidential spending does not require the same public disclosure as other state procurement. There is no mandatory public register of presidential travel costs, delegation manifest, or trip outcomes when the nation sent formal questions about 88 billion shillings in spending for 4 senior officials. The State House Comptroller, the Chief of Staff, the Deputy President's communications team, and the Prime Cabinet Secretary's communication team, none of them responded. The fourth commitment, found in page 4. This is the mathematical centerpiece of the Hustler Nation promise. The manifesto calculated it explicitly. If, as we intend to, increase the average daily income of the 10 million struggling Kenyans by shillings 200 bob a day, this translates to 2 billion shillings a day, 730 billion a year. The manifesto identified these 10 million as a lottery economy, people earning less than 5,000 bob a month. This was the bottom-up model in numbers. The full presidency in 2025-2026 cost 88.3 million a day to run. The Hustler Fund disburses 73 million a day. The presidency costs more every single day than its own flagship poverty program disburses. 1 day of running the presidency cost the equivalent of raising 500,000 hustlers daily income by the promised 200 bob. Think about that. The plan promised to increase the daily income of 10 million Kenyans by 200 bob. 2 billion shillings a day flowing to the bottom. The presidency cost 88 million shillings a day to run. That is not the bottom. That, my friends, that is the top. The fifth commitment found on page 3. And do yourself a favor. Download one of these manifestos and go through it with me. This is one in the forward, written by Ruto himself, signed by him. He described the threat he said Kenya was voting against in 3 words. And I quote, "My opponents subjected us to an absurd process aimed at confusing Kenyans into voting to restore an imperial presidency supported by a court of tribal kingpins." The other road takes us back to imperial presidency, deeper into personalization of power, and to the inevitable, predictable end of economic appetite. I need to sip some coffee, my guys. Because Ruto's presidency will cost 99.9 billion by June 2026, nearly matching Kenyatta's entire 10-year total of 89.9 billion in under 4 years. The presidency's share of the national budget has grown from 0.4% in Kenyatta's final year to 0.77% under Ruto. The national budget grew by 32.1% over the same period. The presidency grew by 38.3%, faster than the government it is supposed to lead. Status under Ruto, 36.3 billion in 3 years and 9 months. State House under Kenyatta's entire second term of 5 years, 26.6 billion. He wrote those words in the forward: imperial presidency, personalization of power, economic appetite. He described the problem. He named it precisely. He then became the problem. This is not me saying Ruto betrayed Kenyans. This is the plan saying it in freaking capital letters. Now, let's look at 5 receipts. Receipt number 1, because we say on the Kenyan week that was, we believe in receipts of our vibes always. So receipt number 1, the source, the National Treasury Supplementary Budget, for financial year 2025-2026. Controller of Budget quarterly reports as per the Daily Nation analysis in April 2026. Here is the presidency's spend, year by year, drawn from National Treasury disclosure and the Controller of Budget. Year 1, 2022 to 2023, 23.3 billion. Year 2, 22.88 billion. Year 3, 21.14 billion. Year 4, current financial year, 21.5 billion released by March 2026. Projected to reach about 32.2 billion by June after the supplementary budget expansion. Cumulative total by March 2026, 88.8 billion. Projected total by June of this year, 99.9. Just 0.1 shy of 100 billion within weeks of crossing 100 billion shillings. That 100 billion will have been spent in under 4 years. Kenyatta's tenure, the whole 10 years total was 89.9 billion. By sub-office, State House itself spent 36.3 billion, the single biggest spender. The Executive Office of the President with 35.1 billion, the Deputy President's Office 12.5 billion, the Prime Cabinet Secretary's Office 3.3 billion. Of the full 88.8 billion, 93.7%, 83 billion went to recurrent expenses, salaries, fuel, delegations, per diems, not roads, not hospitals, running the bloody offices. State House approved budget for this financial year was 8.58 billion. Within 3 months, it had sought an additional 4.5 billion under Article 223, the emergency clause. National Treasury approved disbursements across 6 separate tranches between December 2025 and February 2026. Final figure, you ask? 16.998 billion, nearly double what Parliament had approved. And by January 2026, State House had already spent 10 billion in recurrent expenditure alone, 2.7 billion above its full year allocation, with 5 months remaining. The control of budget warned of budget non-credibility and the risk of complete budget depletion before year end. That is not a metaphor. That is a technical term for a government office running out of its annual allocation before the year is even over. Receipt number 2. Ruto has made 84 foreign trips in his first 1,000 days in office. 156 days spent outside Kenya, more than 5 months in the air or abroad while serving as president. In his first year alone, 26 trips. Between September 2022 and November 2023, 14 months, he and his deputy president made 51 trips to 34 countries, 4 trips per month. The foreign travel bill in year 1 was about 361.77 million, the highest ever recorded for a Kenyan president in a single year. This guy, I kid you not, he is truly a world record breaker. In 2023-2024, there were 31 trips. Of those, only 9 were formal state visits. The rest were summits, conferences, and engagements whose primary purpose and cost structure has not been publicly disclosed. For the current financial year, the State Department for Foreign Affairs had Parliament-approved travel allocation of 1.8 billion. By the time of the supplementary budget, it had already spent 2.2 billion, 400 million shillings above its annual allocation. It has been directed to facilitate 11 more outbound visits before June of this year at a projected additional cost of 3.1 billion. And because it might sound, with these numbers, it might sound very confusing because we've been desensitized to the word billion. Because nowadays, our corruption is in the billions. Everyone, speaks of a billion loss like it is absolutely nothing. And here is where I want to quote one of my favorite social media creators and civic educators, one Mr. Kikombe. Before you do anything, please understand how much a billion is, so that when you hear a billion has been spent on travel, you truly understand. Because 1 billion, he actually said, if you arrange notes from the bottom of Times Tower all the way and stack them each note one at a time, you'll not get to a billion. It will take you 83 years if you're earning, I think, $1 million to actually get to 1 billion shillings. Think about such things, because that is our money being spent. And I want you to remember that the total projected state visit spend for this financial year is 5.3 billion against a 1.8 billion allocation, a shortfall of 3.5 billion with a B again that was originally allocated. Question is not, should the president travel? Of course he should. The question is, why is there no public accounting of what each trip costs the taxpayer? Why does the State Department for Foreign Affairs have a 1.8 billion allocation and a 5.3 billion projected spend? And why is the answer to a 3.5 billion shortfall simply the National Treasury will cover it? There is no public register of presidential travel that shows up trip by trip costs, delegation manifests, and outcomes achieved. In the absence of disclosure, value for money can never be evaluated because we do not know the money. Receipt number 3. The presidential motorcade is not funded from a single budget line. core vehicles are procured under state house. Protection personnel and outrider costs are funded under the National Police Service budget. Satellite lodges, fuel, and maintenance appear across multiple program areas under different votes. Since 2022, the presidential fleet has been expanded. A 20 million Lexus LX 570 in January 2023, a second 20 million Lexus LX 600 in 2024, an armored Toyota Land Cruiser 300 series in 2025, a Mercedes-Benz S560 unveiled at Jamhuri Day 2025. No, the State House renovation budget, a separate line from the operational budget, was about 1.5 billion in 2024-2025 financial year. The 2025-2026 development allocation adds a further 894.9 million for rehabilitation of State House Nairobi and satellite lodges. Ruto has activated state lodges in Eldoret, Sagana, Kisumu, and Nakuru, facilities rarely used under Kibaki or Kenyatta, each requiring its own staffing, fuel, maintenance, and security budget. Parliamentary question on the full aggregate cost of presidential security apparatus produced no consolidated figure. A single budget document showing the total cost of the presidency's physical footprint does not even exist. Why, you ask? Because the expenditure is deliberately distributed across multiple votes. Distributing presidential expenditure across multiple budget votes does not protect national security. It protects the number from scrutiny. You cannot total what you cannot find. Receipt number 4. This receipt is about priority. When the government does not have enough money to fund everything, what does it fund first? Between July and November of 2025, State House received 7.6 billion, 99.7% of its full recurrent allocation before the financial year was halfway through. In the same period, the government had collected only 1.81 trillion against a projected 4.43 trillion in annual revenue. The government was collecting at less than half the projected rate, while State House received 99.7% of its budget in 6 months. Other offices received far less. The National Police Service, for instance, marginal releases despite being central to security delivery. The Ministry of Defense, marginal releases. Devolved units, constrained. The Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, 154 million of its 363 million allocation, less than half. The Deputy President's Office, 89.7% disbursed in 6 months. The Controller of Budget's conclusion was direct. The pattern reflects priority choices, not just cash flow. When revenue falls short and the government must choose what to fund, the presidency is not where cuts begin. That is not a physical accident. That, my friends, is a physical value statement. Receipt number 5. This receipt is different from the others. It is not a number, it's a verdict. Professor Samuel Nyandaimo, senior economics lecturer at the University of Nairobi, speaking on record, said this: most of this money is not properly accounted for. State House has allocated some money through the budget which has been overutilized, meaning they are spending outside the approved budget reallocation, which is an illegality. They are living beyond their means. Parliamentary Budget Office, in its formal analysis of the supplementary budget, said this, or inferred this: the use of Article 223 to expand State House recurrent budget for enhanced operations and maintenance and not emergencies is an abuse of the Constitution that diminishes budget credibility. Control of Budget, Dr. Margaret Nyakango, in her quarterly report, said this: although State House has recorded a strong performance, achieving an overall absorption rate of 55%, well above the first quarter average 25%, it also presented a risk of budget depletion before the end of the financial year 2025-2026, leading to a budget non-credibility. Not my words, her words. The controller of budget approved the supplementary withdrawals. Parliament approved the additional expenditure. The Auditor General will report, but as of today, no consequence has been imposed on State House for exceeding its allocation. 3 independent bodies, the Controller of Budget, the Parliamentary Budget Office, and the Academic Economist, have all described State House spending as legally questionable, physically irresponsible, or outright goddamn illegal. The nation sent formal questions to 4 offices: State House Comptroller Kato Olemitito, Chief of Staff Felix Koskei, Deputy President Kithuris Kindiki's communication team, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi's communication team. None of them were available to offer any response. That silence is also a goddamn receipt. 5 receipts. The budget line confirms the scale. The travel record confirms the accountability gap. The motorcade confirms the deliberate fragmentation of spending across votes. The disbursement data confirms the priority hierarchy. Who gets paid first when money is tight? And the expert records confirms that the people whose job it is to notice have noticed and been ignored. I want to be precise about something, because temptation in Kenyan political commentary, and it happens constantly, is to make this about Ruto. This president is uniquely wasteful. This president is uniquely corrupt. If we just change the president, the problem changes. Unfortunately, the data does not support that assertion. Kenyatta spent 4.5 billion on the presidency in his first year, 12.9 billion in his final year. His first term total between 2012 and 2017 was 36.2 billion. His second term added 49.15 billion. State House under the second Kenyatta term alone was about 26.6 billion. 10-year total, you ask? 89.9 billion. Ruto has spent 88.8 billion in under 4 years. On advisors alone, Ruto has spent about 2.9 billion in under 4 years. 2.9. Kenyatta spent 4.8 billion on advisors over 10 years. Ruto is on pace to spend nearly double Kenyatta's advisor bill in less than half the time. As a share of the national budget, the presidency has moved from 0.38% under Kenyatta in his first year to 0.49% at his midterm, and to 0.44% in his final year, and then jumped to 0.60% in Ruto's first year, and 0.77% by year 4. The line does not go down when presidents change. It goes up every freaking administration. That, my friends, that is not a Ruto problem. That truly and clearly shows that we have a structural problem. And here are the 5 structural drivers that guarantee it continues regardless of who holds the office. Driver number 1, the presidency controls too much. Kenya's executive concentrates appointments, fiscal discretion, and resource allocation in one office to a degree unusual even by African standards. And mark you, we're not even now being compared to the Western civil world. We are being compared to our other African nations. When power is centralized, spending also becomes centralized. A president who arrives without a convoy is not understated. In Kenyan political culture, he's unserious. The convoy is not ego. The convoy, sadly, is signaling. And the system rewards the signal. Every state lodge activated, every new vehicle in the fleet, every expanded delegation is a message to political allies, regional power brokers, and foreign interlocutors. This president commands resource. The signal is the policy. Driver number 2, political loyalty must be purchased continuously. In a collision system built around ethnic arithmetic and competitive elite bargaining, the presidency must maintain a permanent program of reward, appointing allies, compensating supporters, retaining the political coalition that put you in office and keeps you there. None of this is optional. It is the cost of governing in Kenya's political settlement. And crucially, it does not appear cleanly in any single budget line, which is precisely the point. The expenditure that cements political survival is the expenditure that is hardest, and I mean hardest, to find. Driver number 3, there is no accountability mechanism with teeth. The Controller of Budget reports on expenditure. She has flagged State House repeatedly. The Parliamentary Budget Office has called Article 223 misuse and abuse of the Constitution. The Public Accounts Committee can summon accounting officers. Academic economists have called the spending an illegality on national television, but the presidency has never, in Kenya's independent history, faced the consequence for executive overspending that actually changed behavior. A report is filed. A flag is raised, a question is even tabled, and then the money is disbursed anyway. Oversight without consequence is not oversight, my friends. It is theater, and Kenyans are paying for the bloody tickets. Driver number 4, disclosure is voluntary and incomplete. Presidential spending does not require the same public disclosure as other state procurement. There is no mandatory publicly available register of presidential travel costs, delegation manifests, and outcomes achieved. Executive discretionary spending occupies a legally protected space that other constitutional officers do not even or cannot ever enjoy. Members of Parliament file travel returns. Judges file travel returns. The presidency? The presidency, sadly, does not. This is not an oversight. Laws are written by people with an interest in the outcome. The person most protected from disclosure requirements is also the person with the most discretion over how the money is actually spent. Driver number 5, the demand gap and why it narrowed. Kenyans have historically tolerated this, not because they approved of it, but because the political cost of tolerating it was lower than the cost of confronting it, until 2024, when a generation decided the cost calculus had changed. The Gen Z protests were not just about the finance bill. Yeah, let's just come to terms with it. They were about the visible daily contradiction between what the state demands of citizens and what it demands of itself. A government taxing a mamamboga's cooking oil to fund a presidency that spends 88.3 million shillings a day. That is absolutely absurd. Ruto pledged austerity after those protests, starting, he said, with cuts to the presidency's budget. State House's budget then doubled. The demand gap is narrowing. The spending has not followed. 5 structural drivers connected to 5 documented receipts. Now we can answer the question. The question? While ordinary Kenyans have been taxed into poverty, how much is the president spending on himself? And does he have the legal authority? No. To spend it. And here's the answer, and with receipts behind it. Category 1, constitutionally mandated, documented, authorized. Not the problem. The president is entitled to a salary, a residence, and security. Absolutely fine with me, and most probably fine with you too. Before we close, one number you should know. Of the 88.8 billion spent on the presidency so far under Ruto, 93.7% went to recurrent expenditure. You know, the salaries, fuel, delegation, hospitality, per diems. For heaven's sake, this man is a teetotaler. And we have such high hospitality bills. 6.3% went to development. Kenyatta's recurrent share over 10 years was 90.7%. Under Ruto, it went to 93.7%. This is a presidency that is consuming more of its own budget on itself than any administration before it. Category number 2, legally permitted but discretionary. The travel, the delegation, the hospitality, 84 trips in 1,000 days, a travel bill that exceeded its own allocation in the year the austerity circular was issued, a state visit budget of shillings 1.8 billion that became a projected 5.3 billion spend. The law permits it. The law does not even require it to be disclosed. So, guess what happens? It isn't. And in the absence of disclosure, we cannot evaluate value for money because we do not know the total and absolute full cost. Category number 3, the gray zone. 8.6 billion budget doubled to 17 billion through an emergency clause. Not for a pandemic. And mark you, we've had our share. Not for a flood. And we saw what the flood happened in Nairobi just the other day. Not for a bloody war, for enhanced operations and maintenance. The Parliamentary Budget Office says this is an abuse of the Constitution. The Controller of Budget says it creates budget non-credibility. And University of Nairobi Economy says it is an illegality. And yet, it is approved, dispersed, done. Kenya's presidential spending problem is not primarily a corruption problem. It's an accountability architecture problem. The system was designed deliberately across multiple administrations to make it difficult to aggregate, compare, or challenge the true cost of the executive. And until the accountability architecture changes, the president, whichever president, from whichever party, will continue spending at this same level because nothing on paper actually stops them. The question of 2027 is not, will a new president spend less? The question is, will any presidential candidate commit in writing with specifics and specificities to restructuring how the presidency accounts for its spending? That is a receipt we need before we even vote or commit to vote to any of these presidential candidates that are giving themselves up to service. Not the promise. We need the structure. For those watching us from, diaspora, asking whether Kenya is still worth investing in, or worth returning to, or worth betting on, the accountability architecture of the executive is one of the real structural answers. Not the only one, but one of the absolute real ones. And this is my encouragement to all of you out there. I want you to remember that you have the opportunity, because you're constitutionally mandated that you could vote for the presidency. Not for an MP, not for an MCA, not for governor, not for anything, but you hold the critical vote of the presidency. I want you to think about this when you decide whether to vote or abscond. The vote in totality, because there is no other place that you will ever call home, regardless of your status wherever you are in the diaspora, regardless of the comfort that you see in the diaspora. I want you to remember that it is your responsibility as a Kenyan, wherever you are, to decide and take the matters on your own hands before you send a dime. Because even though you do not live in country, you have relatives, you have family, you have business interests, and for all of them to survive, guess what? We need to ask these fundamental questions. So when the president or any other politician comes visiting in your neighborhood, in your neck of the woods, the first question you should ask is, can you commit on paper, in writing, that you will spend less than any other presidency? That in the case that we are not able to raise enough finances, that austerity measures will begin with you, your office, and your cronies, and not the people that you administer over. So, what do we know? State House costs 16.998 billion this year, nearly double what Parliament approved. The full presidency cost 32.22 billion. Ruto will have spent more on the presidency in 4 years than the former President Kenyatta spent in 10. 5 receipts confirm the scale, the travel gap, the fragmentation, the priority hierarchy, and the expert alarm. 5 structural drivers guarantee this continues regardless of who holds the office. And the accountability architecture, by design, makes the true cost impossible to calculate from any single document. The Nation newspaper, researching this same story, sent formal questions to 4 offices. The State House Comptroller, the office, the Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, the Deputy President's Communication Team, the Prime Cabinet Secretary's Communication Team. None of them ever responded. That silence is also a receipt. And for me, it's the most defining receipt. If this episode made you think the presidency is expensive, what about the office next door? Good. That instinct is absolutely correct, because the office of the deputy president cost taxpayers a significant and separate and accountable sum. And the constitutional paradox of that office is its own rabbit hole. That episode is coming soon, and I promise you, by the end of it, you will understand something about Kenyan governance that most political commentators in country have still not yet articulated clearly. This is the Kenyan Week That Was. I'm your host, DY, and like we always say, receipts of our vibes always. I implore you to subscribe if that is a show that you need. Share this content. Let the numbers reverberate with every other Kenyan in your circles. Comment. Let's have a healthy discussion. I want to know what you think about the spending. And above all, ensure that you are ready to vote. I know by now, by the time of publishing of this episode, the voter registration exercise will have culminated. And I hope that you took it seriously and you got registered. Now, the real work begins. The registration was step 1. But for us to succeed, we are not only supposed to register, but we're supposed to stand and get counted. And I hope that, like myself and all the other rest of Kenyans who are willing and ready to participate, that you're going to participate in next year's election. And you'll be voting for the right candidate, someone who will not just give us promises, but who will show us structurally what will make him or her different. Again, I say, I've been your host, DY, from the Kenyan Week That Was, from our desk, the Kenyan Week That Was. I want to thank my producer and everyone else who's taken time to, build this episode. And I pray that God bless all of us as a country, and will keep us safe and will continue to give us the strength to stand for our country. I leave you with the words of the national anthem. O God of all creation, bless this, our land and nation. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace, and liberty, and may plenty be found within our borders. Baraka tele, and have yourselves a lovely day, night or afternoon, wherever you are.